You can't have an airport without this. And in 3 years, this will be in Western Sydney.
I'm not happy with it.
People have lived by airports, people have lived by train stations. You get used to it eventually.
I work nights. It's a little bit annoying.
The proposed flight paths for the new international airport have been released. Compensation for soundproofing and even property acquisition is on the table for people in the noise zone following environmental assessment.
Funds have been set aside. If there is need to insulate homes or to purchase homes, that will form part of that process.
When the airport opens in 2026, there will be 5 operating modes for takeoff and landing, depending on weather, wind direction and speed. During the day, runway 5 will see aircraft landing from the southeast over Lansdowne, Bonnyrigg, Kemps Creek, Greendale and Luddenham, and taking off to the northeast, affecting the suburbs around Twin Creeks, St Clair, St Mary's, Penrith, Emu Plains and the Blue Mountains. Runway 23, arrivals will fly in from the northeast and depart to the southwest, passing by Cobbitty, Glenfield and Georges River. At night on runway 5, Twin Creeks will cop the departure noise before flights mainly head over the Blue Mountains. Arrivals will be coming in from the east, north and west. The other runway will see planes come in over Penrith, Doonside and Eastern Creek and take off over Greendale, past Silverdale, over Appin and out to sea or over the Blue Mountains. The second airport here in Western Sydney was first flagged in the 1980s. For 4 decades, people here in Penrith, the west and southwest have known the noise is coming. But still, the opposition says this plan is no good.
A plane will come over the high street of Penrith almost 40 times a day between 5,000 and 8,000 feet.
It'd be quite devastating for people in the Blue Mountains because at the moment we live in an environment which is pristine and we have a very low ambient noise.
Badgerys Creek and Sydney Airport are chalk and cheese. One has 200,000 people that are heavily affected and the other one has some small communities where there will be some affectation, but the vast majority of people in Western Sydney have been protected.
And the aircraft we're buying now have 50% noise reduction compared to the aircraft we're operating.
To check the impact on your home, go to wsiflightpaths.gov.au. In Penrith, Lizzie Pearl, 9 News.
Give you company this Tuesday afternoon, 131873. So hundreds of thousands of people from Penrith, Kemps Creek, Luddenham, the Blue Mountains, even Carlton, Bexley, Marrickville, Turramurra, Narrabeen. You're all going to get a stack more aircraft noise. It's weird that this story kind of went a little bit missed today, and I don't know why, but I'm going to go through this at length because I think it's extremely important because aircraft noise, while we all know it's a fact of living in a big city, it can be a bugbear of many, especially when they're unfairly having to put up with more of it than some of your neighbours. So today the federal government released its new environmental impact statement on the flight paths for Western Sydney Airport at Badgerys Creek. Now, to make it all work together, what they've had to do, the federal government, is also overhaul the existing flight paths for Kingsford Smith at Mascot, as well as Little Bankstown Airport too. So listen up. I've picked the eyes out of, there's 1,000 odd pages of detail, but I've picked the eyes out of it the best I can. And this is the most important stuff that I can see. So aircraft using Sydney Airport's main runway that take off and fly to the west will now basically use one lane on a 4-lane highway. So I'm describing it like this for this reason. So at the moment, picture it like planes can use all 4 lanes, right, in an area that goes from Sefton right across to the Parramatta River at Olympic Park, all 4 lanes. The changes that are being mooted here and proposed are instead of all 4 lanes, planes, all the same volume of planes have to use the one lane on the same motorway, which means you will see planes go constantly and more frequently over Rockdale, Bardwell Valley, Bexley, Belmore, Clempton Park, Granville, Auburn, Greenacre, Shallora and Holroyd. And it's the same deal with planes departing to the north because they'll go over St Peters, Petersham, Haberfield, Canada Bay, Rydalmere, Borkham Hills and Bella Vista. While eastbound planes, they'll no longer take a big range of paths across the upper North Shore and northern beaches. They were spread out across basically the entire northern beaches the way they could go east. Instead, the new routes, the new flight paths, will go directly over Kellyville, Dural, and then swing east over Asquith, Terry Hills, and North Narrabeen. More frequent and heaps more louder. Heaps louder. And there's a lot to go through. The website, if you want to know, if you want to see the maps and the exact changes to your suburb, they will be on 2gb.com. But I know the people of the Blue Mountains are quite concerned about the noise from Badgerys Creek Airport, for the new Badgerys Creek Airport. It opens in 2026 and there has been a lot of opposition to the aircraft noise and the flight paths. Given there is no curfew, it is a 24-hour airport. Susan Templeman is the member for Macquarie Labor member and federal member, and I'm pleased to say she's on the line. G'day, Susan.
G'day, how you going?
So how did you go in the wash-up with the environmental impact statement? How many of your suburbs are badly affected?
Well, I'm still working through those more than 1,000 pages. But we actually had the flight paths released for the Western Sydney Airport back in June, so that we did have time to really get our heads around them. And essentially, there are impacts across the Blue Mountains, from little places like Lyndon, where there'll be planes coming in and out at night. So as you say, all 24 hours a day, not just in where they are for Sydney with a curfew. So there are impacts up and down the mountains, and as well as across the Hawkesbury, which is also the area that I represent. And so this is now what we're seeing today is the technical detail, the reports that back up the decisions, the issues that they've looked at, and a whole lot of extra detail to help us understand and, most importantly, respond to the preliminary flight paths that have been put forward.
What do you think? What's been the feedback like from your community?
Well, look, 8 years ago, I raised the first concerns about the impacts on the Blue Mountains, and my concerns remain. I've been very vocal about the difference it will make to somewhere as quiet as the Blue Mountains. Anyone who comes here knows that we are a really quiet place, and I'm looking within the EIS at the results of the ambient sound testing, which will help me understand just how quiet it is, and therefore help us understand what the actual noise levels, how they've been assessed. So I remain really concerned about it. What I'm pleased to see is that instead of doing what the previous government did, was dump it all on us on a single day, say, here you go, people, here's your flight paths, here's all the details, and now you've got to turn around a response really quickly. I'm really pleased that we've got a good consultation process. We've already had 3 months. We've got another 3 months before submissions have to be in, and I've got where I'm assured by the Minister that the feedback received during this public exhibition is going to be considered when the final flight paths are released. I'm
just having a look at the flights above 70 decibels, and I'm just looking at the map, the flight map. There is nothing in the Blue Mountains. Doesn't affect the Blue Mountains at all, in the first instance anyway.
No, so the levels are lower. We're further away from the airport. So the 70 decibel stuff is going to be all the way round on the ground.
Luddenham, Badgerys Creek, Kemps Creek, places like that.
Yeah. And the difference, I think, this is something we're really conscious of, is that the noise might not be as loud, but we are higher and it's coming off a quieter base. And so this is the stuff that people are working their way through. How do we explain the concerns we have? What is there in here that speaks to those concerns, and what's been measured for us to be able to put forward the things that we think are a worry. For instance, to have planes coming over you at 3 o'clock in the morning it sounds louder at 3 o'clock in the morning than it does at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Susan, can I play devil's advocate? You live in the you live in the Blue Mountains. Is it any louder than the wildlife you live around?
Well, that's what's really interesting. When they did the testing of what the noises are, and I had a briefing on this, as did the people on the forum on Western Sydney Airport, the things that were loud were frogs. because it is so quiet. I say it's so quiet you can hear your neighbour fart, but actually what it showed was that it's so quiet you can hear the frogs are the noisiest thing. And right now we hear planes that are flying at quite high heights, 17,000, 18,000, even 20,000 feet above us. And we notice them, and some people are annoyed by them.
Oh, well, Susan, with the greatest of respect, they can take their annoyance somewhere else. You live on the outskirts of Sydney,
Well, that's what I'm saying, Chris. We live with that now, and that's fine. What we're trying to get our heads around is just what is the difference in that noise when it's down at 8,000 or 9,000 feet? What will that do in a place that is otherwise really, really quiet?
All right. Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris.
That's the federal member for Macquarie, Susan Templeman. Geez, the people in the Blue Mountains don't like this aircraft noise. You're going to get no noise, like almost none, according to this noise map. But I tell you where we'll get noise, because they've changed the flight paths in and around Mascot, Rockdale, Bardwell Valley and Bexley.
Live, local and only on 2GB. It's Drive with Chris O'Keefe.
Now, many of the suburbs that are really badly impacted by the changes to these flight paths at Mascot, you're looking at suburbs like Rockdale, Bexley North, Bexley itself, Bardwell Valley. Well, Mayor Bill Savranovsky is on the line. He's the Mayor of Bayside Council. Mayor, thanks for your time.
No problems, Chris.
Are you concerned about this? You have effectively a 4-lane highway there at the moment where the planes can use different parts of the airspace above these suburbs. The proposed changes will make it 1 lane, which will mean that it's extremely concentrated, and this aircraft noise will be very frequent above suburbs like Rockdale, Bardwell Valley and Bexley North.
I am concerned, Chris, but can I just put it up front? I live under the flight path. I am concerned. Apparently it's a 1,000-page document, and the council staff are going to look into it. Look, when I first moved into Rockdale 50 years ago, we could handle the aircraft noise because it was all about sharing. And this document, to me, on the surface, doesn't do that. It's not about sharing. We're copping it. We're going to cop it even more. And we supported the second airport, but not this. Not to have increased flights over our homes.
Were you aware, Mayor Savranovsky, that there was going to be an increased frequency of flights, given that they did have to change the aircraft paths, the flight paths, as a result of Western Sydney Airport going in? Did you know this was happening?
Chris, to be honest with you, no, I wasn't aware. Like most people in Rockdale, we thought with the second airport that we would see, some quick relief in terms of aircraft noise. Just on the initial documents that were released today, we're going to be worse off than what we are now, which is a shame because it's about sharing the noise and the aircraft movements. So if we're going to get more and more over Rockdale, Carlton, Bexley, or even at Mascot, we'll certainly put a submission in to oppose this environmental impact statement. It's not what we wanted. We wanted relief, and that's why there's a curfew at Sydney Airport. As I said before, Chris, I live under the flight path.
What's it like now, the aircraft noise?
Look, we had some peace for a number of years because most of the flights were taken off and rolled off the bay. It is irritating when there's a wind change, and we accept that, for safety and that. Sometimes you can't actually go out on your backyard because of the noise. As I said before, Chris, I've got an interest because I live under the flight path. I bought my home knowing it's under the flight path, but not to cop more and more noise. That's not what we want, particularly in Bayside.
All right, Mayor, I appreciate you jumping on. Thank you so much for your insight. Clearly, Bayside Council will be opposing this, but it is 1,000-odd pages, so you'll have a fair bit of work to get through it. That's the Mayor of Bayside, Bill Savranovsky. Now, areas around Penrith and the seat of Lindsay will also be impacted with the flight paths and all these noise maps that they've put out today from the new Badgerys Creek Airport. Melissa McIntosh is the federal member for Lindsay, and she's on the line. Melissa, thanks for your time.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
You worried?
It's a shocker. That's the best way I can put it. Lindsay, the electorate of Lindsay, now has the most flight paths at 18, around 220 flights a day. Susan spoke about consultation. I reckon consultation has been atrocious so far. The mayor before me said it himself. He didn't know anything about this. And I agree, sharing is important. That's what the community of Lindsay want as well. Right now we are bearing the brunt of the flights. It's very different to 2016, what Susan talks about, fighting for the Blue Mountains. Now I need to fight for the community of Penrith and the surrounds, because we have aircraft both taking off and landing, impacting homes multiple times in a day.
So I'm having a look at the map again. So you're going to get roughly 60 decibels in Penrith, and you're looking at closer to 70, 75 decibels when there's an aircraft taking off or landing at Colleton, Cambridge Park, Claremont Meadows, even down to Kemps Creek. And, you know, obviously when you're right near Badgerys Creek itself, you can expect, if you're living right next to an airport, it's going to be loud. But if you're in Penrith, it's going to be loud when they're taking off and landing.
Yeah, and it's right over the top of the high street of Penrith, and that's why I want the community to be really aware of this, because it's new for us. Susan's community has many years of advocating where it's sort of been sprung on us just over the last couple of months. So people of Penrith need to be aware that there's going to be planes flying really low overhead while they're enjoying their afternoon at the log cabin or Emu Hall. It's going to be a very different landscape once this airport opens.
And 24 hours a day.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's non-stop. And by no means am I saying that we shouldn't have the airport. The economic potential, what it does for jobs in Western Sydney is transformational. What I'm talking about is like what the Mayor said, it needs to be shared, and we need to have proper consultation. The Albanese Labor government has been ridiculously slow on that. They just seem to be forgetting once again about the people of Western Sydney.
All right, Melissa, I appreciate you jumping on. Again, those maps are on our website, 2gb.com. If they're not up yet, they will be up soon. But Melissa McIntosh, as soon as people realise that there's planes going overhead and it's going to be loud, I guarantee you'll be inundated with correspondence. I appreciate you jumping on.
So will the government. Make submissions. That's going to be the important thing. People have to have their say.
That's Melissa McIntosh, the federal member for Lindsay. 131873. If you live in any of these areas, I'm talking Bardwell Valley, Bexley, Belmore, Clempton Park, Granville, even Borkham Hills, Bella Vista, Narrabeen, Kellyville, Asquith. It's all changing, the flight paths. This is the proposal. You now have a certain period of time until the end of January to put in your submissions, because if you are under these things, you need to check the map out. If you are under these things, you are crazy if you don't put a submission in. This is your final chance.
Preliminary flight paths for the new Western Sydney Airport shows the suburbs that'll be most impacted by aircraft noise. People living near Greendale, Luddenham and Mt Druitt will be hardest hit by the curfew-free airport. Liam Tapper has the details.
Good morning. Well, millions of residents here in Western Sydney are set to be disrupted by widespread noise created by the new airport being built at Badgerys Creek. Preliminary flight paths have been released by the airport, which show that a number of suburbs along the flight corridor will experience noise both day and night. Mt Druitt will be the worst impacted, with planes set to fly over at all hours once the airport is operational in 2026. During the day, other suburbs like Bankstown and Prospect will come under the flight noise, while at night, Penrith, Windsor and of course Mt Druitt will feel the full force of the aeroplanes above. To start with, the airport will see 25,000 flights per year, the first airport in Sydney to be operational 24 hours a day. In the face of public unrest over noise concerns, the federal government has developed a portal where residents can see how much noise each suburb is set to experience when the planes are in the sky. Community members can also provide feedback with any concerns that they may have. Now, the final flight paths are yet to be confirmed. The federal government will do that when they release their environmental assessment later this year.
Fears are growing over how much noise Western Sydney Airport will inflict on residents. With the runway to operate 24 hours a day, there are plans to finally reveal what locals can expect when the airport opens.
The Western Sydney Airport is taking shape, the next stage of construction at Terminal Roof, with runways built to handle jets like the 747 Freighter and A380 Super Jumbos.
We are going to be subject to noise like we've never had before.
Starting with villages clustered nearby. In Luddenham, they're waiting to hear what help they'll get to muffle the noise.
Sort of kept in the dark a bit, to tell you the truth.
They'll be going over our homes all the time, so we'd expect some sort of help.
Next month, the long-awaited plan for flight paths along with noise impacts will be released, with up to 63,000 plane movements a year, 10 million passengers.
This is the first time that there's a 24/7 airport in Sydney, so people are going to be impacted.
Areas like the World Heritage listed Blue Mountains.
The Blue Mountains is one of the quietest places on the planet.
Jets will take off and land in a northeasterly or southwesterly direction depending on the wind, but it's argued most of Sydney's west shouldn't be concerned about noise.
It's the equivalent of someone in Manly complaining about aircraft noise in Mascot. It's that far apart.
For Sydney suburbs near and far, it's an airport rapidly becoming a reality, due to open in 2026, but only after months of extensive testing. And the first planes overhead. Chris Marr, 7 News.
You can't have an airport without this. And in 3 years, this will be in Western Sydney.
I'm not happy with it.
People have lived by airports, people have lived by train stations. You get used to it eventually.
I work nights. It's a little bit annoying.
The proposed flight paths for the new international airport have been released. Compensation for soundproofing and even property acquisition is on the table for people in the noise zone following environmental assessment.
Funds have been set aside. If there is need to insulate homes or to purchase homes, that will form part of that process.
When the airport opens in 2026, there will be 5 operating modes for takeoff and landing, depending on weather, wind direction and speed. During the day, runway 5 will see aircraft landing from the southeast over Lansdowne, Bonnyrigg, Kemps Creek, Greendale and Luddenham, and taking off to the northeast, affecting the suburbs around Twin Creeks, St Clair, St Mary's, Penrith, Emu Plains and the Blue Mountains. Runway 23, arrivals will fly in from the northeast and depart to the southwest, passing by Cobbitty, Glenfield and Georges River. At night on runway 5, Twin Creeks will cop the departure noise before flights mainly head over the Blue Mountains. Arrivals will be coming in from the east, north and west. The other runway will see planes come in over Penrith, Doonside and Eastern Creek and take off over Greendale, past Silverdale, over Appin and out to sea or over the Blue Mountains.
The second airport here in Western Sydney was first flagged in the 1980s. For 4 decades, people here in Penrith, the west and southwest have known the noise is coming. But still, the opposition says this plan is no good.
A plane will come over the high street of Penrith almost 40 times a day between 5,000 and 8,000 feet.
It'd be quite devastating for people in the Blue Mountains because at the moment we live in an environment which is pristine and we have a very low ambient noise.
Badgerys Creek and Sydney Airport are chalk and cheese. One has 200,000 people that are heavily affected and the other one has some small communities where there will be some affectation, but the vast majority of people in Western Sydney have been protected.
And the aircraft we're buying now have 50% noise reduction compared to the aircraft we're operating.
To check the impact on your home, go to wsiflightpaths.gov.au. In Penrith, Lizzie Pearl, 9 News.